I'm 49, and for most of my life I've considered myself a pretty tolerant person. I've raised 2 kids, worked in healthcare for over 20 years, took care of my late mother while juggling shifts, and somehow kept my marriage from collapsing through all of it. So I don't say this lightly. I think I've finally reached my breaking point. It started 5 months ago, when my 22-year-old son, Tyler, asked if his girlfriend could move in with us. Her name's Marissa, she's 21, and they'd been dating for a little over 8 months at the time. I barely knew her. She'd been over a few times for dinner, always polite, always with a weirdly firm handshake and this unsettling, too-wide smile. But hey, young love, right? Tyler told us Marissa had to leave her apartment because her roommate was unstable, and she had nowhere else to go. I'll admit, I felt for her. I didn't want to be that cold, dismissive mother-in-law type, so after talking it over with my husband, who barely listens when he's watching football, let's be real, we said yes. We have a finished basement with a bathroom and a kitchenette, more than enough space for her to have some privacy. The first week everything was fine. She was overly helpful, almost performative. She'd clean spotless counters, rearrange things in the fridge, make these Pinterest-level breakfasts at 6 a.m., then casually mention how some people eat healthy, and it was subtle, but I caught she was testing the waters. I brushed it off. I figured maybe she was just trying to impress us, settle in, earn her place. But then she started crossing lines. She began calling me by my first name. Not in a casual way, but in this weirdly territorial tone, like I wasn't mom, I was a roommate. She'd tell Tyler things like, "Your mom left dishes in the sink again. Your mom uses way too much bleach on the laundry." Always, "your mom." Not a hint of affection or respect, just constant micro-comments. I'd roll my eyes and let it slide, until the day she tried to take over Sunday dinner. That's my thing. Every Sunday, I cook a big meal. It's the one consistent tradition we've had since the kids were little. I plan the whole week around it. Roast, sides, dessert, the works. Well, one Sunday, I came back from the store with ingredients for my classic lemon rosemary chicken, and the whole kitchen was full of smoke. Marissa had completely taken over. She said, "Oh, I figured I'd give you a break and make my famous mushroom risotto." It was no big deal. But here's the kicker. She used my grandmother's cast iron skillet, the one I've told everyone not to touch unless they know how to season and clean it, and she had it soaking in soapy water. I don't even remember what I said. I just felt this wave of red-hot fury rise up in my chest. But I swallowed it. Tyler was right there, watching. He looked nervous, like he could feel the tension but didn't know who to side with, so I smiled. I thanked her for cooking. I ate the gluey risotto, and I told myself I was overreacting. I wasn't, because that was just the beginning. After the kitchen incident, I told myself to breathe. I convinced myself that maybe Marissa was just a little intense, maybe trying too hard to fit in. But then things started disappearing, more accurate and replaced. It started small. One morning I reached for my favorite mug, the one with chipped paint that says Mom Fuel, and it was gone. In its place, a brand new white ceramic mug that said Best Girlfriend Ever in glittery gold letters. I asked Tyler if he'd seen He shrugged. Marissa from the other room chimed in. "Oh, it had a crack in it, so I tossed it. I thought it was time for something cuter anyway." I said nothing, but inside something snapped. I hadn't had that reaction since I caught my younger sister borrowing my clothes in high school and spilling, but this wasn't nail polish. This was my house. Over the next 2 weeks, it escalated. My hand soap in the bathroom, replaced. Gone was my lavender and eucalyptus pump, replaced by some rose gold monstrosity that reeked of coconut and fake vanilla. My favorite throw blanket on the couch? Swapped for a new aesthetic one Marissa bought on Amazon. She told me the old one looked dusty and ruined the vibe. Even the family calendar, the one I've used for over a decade to track birthdays, appointments, and holidays, she took it down, put up a corkboard instead. Tyler just laughed when I asked about it and said, "It's just a calendar, Mom. Marissa likes things tidy." Tidy? No, this wasn't about tidiness. This was about control, and the worst part was that Tyler didn't seem to notice. Or worse, he did notice, and he didn't care. I started waking up earlier just to reclaim the kitchen before she got to it. It felt ridiculous, but I was determined not to lose another Sunday. When that day came, I cooked early, had everything prepped and ready before 10 a.m. When she came upstairs and saw the stove already on, she blinked, just for a second, like I'd stolen something. She didn't argue. Instead, she said, "Oh, I was gonna make brunch, but that's okay." And then she sat on the couch, in my spot, the corner with the best lighting. She curled up with a book I was halfway through, one she definitely asked to borrow. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at my throw blanket, my book in my seat, and I realized something horrifying. She wasn't just making herself comfortable, she was trying to replace me, and nobody else seemed to see it, not even my husband, because that night, he said Marissa was growing on him, that she was sweet, that she reminded him of me when I was younger. I couldn't sleep after. I kept replaying everything in my head. The mug, the calendar, the Sunday dinner, the cast iron skillet, and one word kept echoing. Why? What does she really want? About a week after the blanket and book incident, I noticed something new. Or maybe something familiar. Marissa had dyed her hair. Now, for most people, this wouldn't be a big deal. But she didn't just dye it any random color. She dyed it the exact same auburn shade I've had for the past decade. Same soft waves, too. I know hair trends come and go, but this wasn't a trend. This was intentional. When I saw her walk in from the salon, my stomach dropped. Tyler smiled like it was no big deal and told her she looked amazing, and maybe she did, on someone else. But all I saw was her staring back at me like a mirror. Later that night, I caught her in the hallway wearing one of my scarves. Not similar, not a dupe. Mine. I hadn't even realized it was missing until I saw it on her. She wore it so casually, like she'd owned it forever. I told myself to say something, to stand my ground, but before I could, she looked at me and said, "Oh, I found this in the hall closet. Hope you don't mind. It matches my eyes." She smiled, and I swear to God, it was the same exact smile I give people when I'm pretending to be polite but secretly boiling. The next day I checked the closet. 3 of my scarves were gone. One of my belts, too. A pair of shoes I know I didn't misplace. Every time I thought I was imagining things, I'd find one more little item tucked away in her side of the basement, like she'd been slowly absorbing me. Still, I didn't tell Tyler. I wasn't ready. I thought maybe if I just kept track of everything, maybe I could prove I wasn't being paranoid. So I started documenting. A little notebook, hidden in the laundry behind the dryer. Mug swapped. Book taken. Blanket replaced. Family calendar removed. Hair color copied. My scarf. My earrings. Yep, found those on her bathroom counter next to my perfume. But the final straw? The one that made me realize this girl wasn't just obsessive, came one afternoon when I got home early from work. I walked in quietly. No one heard me, and there she was. In the kitchen, wearing my apron, cooking my recipe, playing my playlist. And she was talking to Tyler. Except, she wasn't talking like his girlfriend. She was imitating. Same cadence, same phrases, the same tone I use when I talk to my kids, when I nag them gently, affectionately. I stood there, frozen, watching her from the hallway. She told him he needed to drink more water, that he looked tired, that maybe he should take a nap before dinner. She even called him baby, not in a romantic way, but the way I used to call him when he was 5. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. It was like watching someone put on my skin and try to wear it as their own. She wanted more than to be part of the family. She wanted my place in the family, and I didn't know what to do next. 2 nights after the apron incident, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was going on in that basement. Not just assumptions, not just gut feelings. I needed proof. I wanted something tangible that I could show Tyler, or even my husband, to make them see what I was seeing. So I waited. I waited until Marissa went out with her friend for the evening. Tyler was upstairs playing some game with his headset on, completely oblivious to the world around him. I took that opportunity and crept down into the basement. Let me be clear. I didn't want to snoop. I'm not the kind of person who goes through people's things, but this felt different. I wasn't invading privacy. I was protecting my home. At first glance, everything looked fine. Clean, tidy, a little too perfect. Her bed was made like she'd done it with no clutter anywhere. But when I opened the closet, that's when I found it. A small gray storage bin, barely tucked away, like she'd gotten lazy about hiding it. Inside, I found my missing things. My scarves. A pair of reading glasses I lost over a month ago. My gold necklace from the top drawer of my dresser. The one I never wear but keep for sentimental reasons. Folded next to them, a sweatshirt of mine I hadn't even realized was gone. It still smelled faintly like my perfume. I pulled the bin out and sat on the edge of her bed. At the bottom, underneath everything else, was a plain black leather-bound journal. No label, no name, just a thin elastic strap keeping it closed. I hesitated. Then I opened it. The first few pages were normal. Song lyrics, scribbled notes, some mood board ideas. Nothing weird. But about a third of the way in, the handwriting changed. Became neater, obsessively neat. Each line centered, perfectly spaced. That's when the content changed, too. The entries weren't about Marissa. They were about me. She wrote about how I moved around the house, what times I woke up, what I usually wore on certain days, how I styled my hair. She even described how I tucked my leg under me when I watched TV, how I cut vegetables, how I laughed. She listed phrases I use, quirks, my expressions, favorite meals. She called it observation work. Every page was more unsettling than the last. It wasn't admiration. It was study, like she was preparing to take over a role in a movie. But the movie was my life. Then I turned to a page that made my blood run cold. It said, "She's not going to give it up easily, but once Tyler sees I can do everything she can, and better, he'll stop defending her. He'll see who really keeps this house together." Another line below it, dated just 2 days before. "Sooner or later, she'll slip, and when she does, I'll be ready to step in." I dropped the journal like it was burning my hands. I felt sick. This wasn't some insecure girl trying too hard. This was calculated. She was tracking me, mimicking me, planning something. I put everything back as neatly as I could. I didn't take the journal. I didn't want her to know I'd seen it. Not yet. I needed time to figure out my next move. But one thing was certain, this wasn't just about boundaries anymore. It was about survival. She was trying to erase me. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the house made me jump. Every creak in the floorboards made me wonder if Marissa had realized I'd been in her room, if she was already planning her next move. I kept replaying those lines from her journal, especially that last one. Sooner or later she'll slip, and when she does, I'll be ready to step in. I realized something around 3 a.m., lying there staring at the ceiling. She didn't just want to replace me in the house. She wanted to replace me in Tyler's life, emotionally, psychologically, almost maternally. The next morning I thought I'd confront her quietly, one-on-one. No yelling, no drama, just a clear boundary. But life doesn't hand you perfect moments for confrontation. At breakfast I found my husband Tyler and Marissa already sitting at the table. She was wearing one of my sweaters, one I hadn't worn since winter. She'd even rolled up the sleeves the same way I do. It looked intentional, like a test. I'd reached my limit. I sat down and said, loud and clear, "Marissa, we need to talk. Now. Alone." She looked surprised, just for a second, then smiled sweetly, like she'd been expecting this. But Tyler cut in first. He asked what was why I sounded so tense. So I told not everything from the journal I just started small. I told him I found a box of my missing belongings in Marissa's closet, my clothes, my accessories, my personal things. I told him how I felt like being phased out of my own house, little by little. At first, Tyler laughed. Thought I was joking. Then he looked at Marissa. She didn't deny it. She actually said, with a straight face, "I thought she'd donated that stuff. I was just trying to make use of what was already here, like my belongings were free for the taking, like I didn't even matter in this home anymore." I looked at my husband, waiting for him to say something, anything. He stared at his coffee, silent. That silence broke something in me. I got up, walked to the hall closet, grabbed the little notebook I'd been keeping, and dropped it on the table. Page after page, dated, cataloged, listed, everything she'd done, swapped, taken, mimicked. Tyler flipped through it, his smile slowly fading. But still, no anger, no outrage, just confusion, doubt. And that's when Marissa finally spoke up again. She looked at him and said something I'll never forget. "She's just jealous, Tyler, that I can connect with you in a way she can't anymore." That was it. That was the line. Because it wasn't romantic. It wasn't flirty. It was colder than that. Possessive. Like she saw me not as a mother, but a rival. Tyler stood up, finally looking like he might say something to her. But before he could, I made the decision for all of us. I turned to Marissa and told her she had 24 hours to pack her things and leave, that I didn't care where she went, that if she wasn't gone by the next morning, I would call the police and have her removed as a trespasser. She stared at me, and I mean through me, then said nothing, just picked up her mug, smiled, and walked back down to the basement. Tyler didn't say a word. He just sat back down at the table and started drinking his coffee again like none of it happened, and in that moment I realized something terrifying. Marissa wasn't the only one I didn't recognize anymore. Morning came, and I woke up tense, my ears trained to hear the dragging of suitcases, a door slamming shut, anything that would signal Marissa's departure. But the house was quiet. Too quiet. When I walked into the kitchen, her breakfast was already on the table. Eggs, avocado toast, and fresh fruit, meticulously arranged, like I was the guest now. She was sitting there, fully dressed, sipping from her best girlfriend ever mug like it was just another normal Tuesday. I stood frozen in the doorway, waiting for her to acknowledge me. She didn't. She glanced at her phone, took another sip, and asked if I needed coffee. Coffee. Like I hadn't given her a 24-hour deadline. Like she hadn't read the rules. My husband came in behind me, half-dressed for work, yawning like this was any other day. I looked at him, searching his face for a sign. Was he going to say something? Ask why she was still here? He didn't. He grabbed a plate and started making himself a serving of the breakfast she had cooked. Right in front of me. I couldn't believe it. I asked Marissa why she was still here. Flat out. She didn't even blink. She told me in that too calm voice, "I think we both said things we didn't mean yesterday. I assumed we'd talk more after you cooled down." Then she smiled, that smile, and added, "Besides, Tyler said I could stay as long as I needed." I turned to my son. My son. He looked guilty for half a second, then shrugged and muttered, "I just thought maybe we could all take a breath before making any big decisions." Like I was the one being irrational. Like I hadn't spent the last month watching this girl try to morph into me. I don't know how to describe what I felt right then. It wasn't just anger or disbelief. It was like something cracked deep inside my chest. Like I was standing in my own kitchen, in my own home. But somehow, I'd already been pushed out. She had no intention of leaving. None. That night, I found the storage bin in her room completely empty, not gone. Like she'd known I'd been in there. Like she'd moved everything just to prove she was a step ahead, and it didn't stop there. The next morning, I came downstairs and saw a family photo, one from years ago when the kids were little, had been taken down. In its place, a new photo, a selfie of her and Tyler, framed, on the living room shelf, front and center. She wasn't just staying. She was settling in, and I started to wonder if she'd ever really intended to leave in the first place. It happened on a Thursday. I came home early from work after a half-day shift, hoping to sneak in a quiet lunch and a nap before anyone else was back. The house looked empty. No car in the driveway, lights off, total silence. It was the first time I'd felt calm in weeks. But as I opened the front door, I heard a faint humming, a soft voice, someone singing. Upstairs, my heart dropped. I crept up slowly, every step on the staircase heavier than the last. The humming got clearer the closer I got. It was coming from my bedroom. When I pushed open the door, I froze. Marissa was in my closet, wearing my clothes. She had one of my blouses on, the silk ivory one I wore to my anniversary dinner last year. My necklace was around her neck. She was standing in front of the full-length mirror, swaying slightly, humming to herself, completely lost in the moment. She didn't hear me at first. I stood there watching her hold her arms out, twirl a little, admire herself. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She whispered, "Soon." Just that one word, like a promise, like a plan. I snapped out of my shock and stepped forward, and the floor creaked. She turned so fast it was like she'd been electrocuted. Her smile dropped. Her whole body stiffened. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said one thing. "Get out of my room." She tried to explain, said she was just borrowing something, that she thought she'd return it before I noticed, that it was harmless. She even tried to laugh, like we were both in on some joke. It wasn't funny. It was terrifying. She was inside my most personal space, wearing my clothes, going through my drawers, singing to herself in my mirror. This wasn't some confused young girl trying to fit in. This was someone fantasizing about becoming me. I told her to take off the blouse and leave. She didn't argue, just peeled it off slowly, folded it like it was hers, and handed it to me. Then she looked me right in the eyes and said, "You're making this harder than it needs to be," and walked out, like I was the one causing trouble, like I was in the way of whatever future she had mapped out. That was the moment I realized something I hadn't let myself admit before. This wasn't just boundary crossing or obsession. It was deliberate, and the scariest part? I still didn't know how far she was willing to go. I didn't sleep that. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the image of her twirling in my blouse, whispering soon. Every creak in the house made me sit up. Every breeze against the window felt like a warning. By morning, I knew I couldn't just wait for the next line she'd cross. I needed to get ahead of her. I needed to understand her. I had to find out who Marissa really was. Beyond the fake smiles, the polite dinners, the too perfect breakfasts. So while Tyler was at work and she was out running errands, I took a risk. I opened her laptop. Now, before anyone judges me, yes, I know it was a massive invasion of privacy, but this girl had been stealing my life. Slowly, piece by piece, she had been mimicking me, replacing me, violating every personal boundary I had. At this point, privacy was a luxury none of us could afford. To my surprise, there was no password. It opened instantly. That should have been my first red flag. The desktop was obsessively neat. 4 folders centered in the middle of the screen. One was labeled Finances. One was School. One was Work Documents. The fourth, sitting there bold and unassuming, was just called Study. My stomach turned. I clicked it. Inside were dozens of files, all named with dates, some as far back as before she met Tyler. I opened one at random. It was a Word doc filled with paragraphs of written observations. Not about me. Not yet. They were about a woman named Sharon. Things like, Sharon keeps her keys in the left pocket of her coat. She forgets them every 3rd day. She cries quietly in the shower. I don't think her husband hears her. She wears the same cardigan every Wednesday. I wonder if it's for him. I opened another document. This one was about someone named Elise. Elise doesn't know I'm using her lotion. It's helping me understand her scent memory. She still thinks I work weekends. She hasn't asked any questions. Her son leaves his door unlocked. Each file was more disturbing than the last. Different women, different cities, same patterns. In each one, she infiltrated a home, a family, observed, imitated. There were notes on hairstyles, meal routines, bedtime, and then I found the most recent file. My name was the title. It wasn't just notes. It was a blueprint. Morning coffee at 7:15 a.m., 2 sugars, heavy cream, prefers lavender hand soap. Replaced it with vanilla to test reaction, high sensitivity. Sleeps with door cracked open, light sleeper, avoid 1 to 3 a.m. Tyler responds better when I use her tone. When I say honey, he softens. Getting close. Need to find out what she's hiding in the laundry room. I slammed the laptop shut. My body was shaking. She knew about the notebook. She knew I was watching her. She'd been watching me back. I didn't realize how far this had gone. I thought she was obsessed with me, but it wasn't about who I was. It was about what I represented. She wanted to be someone, anyone, as long as they had a life she could slide into, and she'd done it before. Multiple times. I printed everything, every file, every name. I made copies. I backed it all up to a flash drive and hid it behind the washing machine, the one place she never touched, because whatever she was planning next, I had to be ready. I played it cool the rest of that day, pretended like nothing had happened, like I hadn't seen her digital diary of stolen lives, like I didn't now know that I was just the latest costume in her growing collection. When she came back from her so-called errands, which I'm convinced were nothing but time fillers to let her float around town and fantasize about lives she didn't belong in, she acted like everything was normal. Walked into the kitchen, complimented my blouse, asked if I wanted help with dinner. I didn't flinch. I smiled and handed her a knife, and the entire time she stood beside me slicing vegetables, I could feel her watching me, not like a normal person, but like a hawk that couldn't figure out if the mouse below it was playing dead. She knew. Not exactly what I'd seen, but she knew something had changed, and I guess so did I, because I wasn't afraid anymore. That night, I went to bed early, locked the door, stashed the flash drive in my pillowcase. I barely slept, waiting for something to happen. I kept thinking about the other women, Sharon, Elise. What happened after her notes ended? She never wrote and she just moved on, or maybe something worse. At around 3:40 a.m., I heard a soft knock on my 3 quick taps. Didn't answer. Then, sweet, quiet, like honey melting through. I know you looked. Silent. You don't understand what you saw. I didn't speak, didn't move. Then, louder. You think you're protecting him, but you don't even know what he's capable. What? That line hit differently. He? I waited a few seconds, heart racing, then quietly slid out of bed and crept toward the door. I didn't open it, but I knelt down and listened. Just the hum of the fridge downstairs. When I opened the door a crack, the hallway was empty, but the photo of me and Tyler from his high school graduation, the one that sat on the wall for years, was lying face down on the floor. Smashed. I didn't clean it up. The next morning, Marissa acted like it never happened. Cakes, played her music, told Tyler I seemed a little off late and maybe needed a break. She was gaslighting, trying to beat me to the punch, get him to doubt me first, but I wasn't playing defense anymore. After breakfast, I handed Tyler a folder, said it was something I found while cleaning. He asked what it was. I just said, "It's your girlfriend," and walked out the front door. I didn't wait for his reaction. I didn't need to, because deep down I already knew. Marissa wasn't going to let go without a fight, and now? The mask had cracked. By the time I came back that evening, the air in the house had changed. It was heavy. Still, Tyler was in the living room, alone. No TV, no music, just him on the edge of the couch, holding that folder like it weighed 100 pounds. He didn't say anything at first, just looked up at me with a face I hadn't seen in years, confused, hollow, and quietly heartbroken. The look kids get when they realize their parents don't have all the answers. Like the world's rules had suddenly been rewritten, and Marissa? Gone. At least that's what we... Until Tyler showed me the note. Folded, placed neatly in the center of his desk upstairs, handwritten, perfectly spaced, like her journal. It read, "I didn't mean to make you choose, but I guess she needed to win. I hope one day you understand why I was the better fit for this family. Until then, I'll find somewhere I'm needed. No remorse. Just ego." That night, Tyler didn't eat. He sat in silence, occasionally rubbing his eyes like he was trying to wipe the last 6 months out of his memory. I didn't press him. I let him sit in the aftermath of it all, hoping that folder had spoken louder than I ever could. But something still felt off, because when I went downstairs to the basement to check if she'd taken her things, I found her clothes, shoes, her framed photo with Tyler, all still there. Nothing had been packed, and on the bed, a printed bus ticket for the following week. That's when it clicked. She didn't plan to leave. She planned to fake leaving, make a dramatic exit, give Tyler time to miss her, to doubt me, to soften, and then in a few days, she'd return, apologetic, wounded, fragile, and count on him being too confused and too emotional to send her away again. But what she hadn't counted on was me finding everything. She thought she'd stay one step ahead, like she had with those other women, except I wasn't like them, because I didn't wait. The next morning I called a locksmith and changed every lock in the house. I boxed her things, all of them, and left them on the porch. I left a single note on top. "You're not coming back. Do not knock. Do not call. This house isn't yours." And it never was. By noon, she'd picked up the box. Never saw her, never heard from her. But one of the neighbors said she drove away slowly, like she was expecting someone to run out and stop her. No one did. Weeks have passed. Tyler's still healing. We've talked more in the last month than we have in the last 5 years. He admitted he ignored the red flags because Marissa made him feel needed. He thought her attention was love. Now he knows the difference. My husband, well, he apologized too. Quietly, said he let her charm distract him from the way she was subtly tearing me down. He said he thought I was just being territorial. I told him I was being territorial because someone came into my home, smiled in my face, and tried to take my place. Not with fire, but with soft hands and sugar-sweet lies. That's the thing about people like Marissa. They don't come in like hurricanes. They come in like steam, seeping under doors, settling into the walls, until suddenly you can't breathe. But I breathe now. And this house? It's mine again. And if anyone like her ever crosses that threshold again, They'll find a woman who's no longer afraid of smiling faces with knives behind them.